This is Murdoch. He's going to be pulling freight on the main line. You're the biggest engine I've ever seen, cried Thomas. You're a chatty lot, Murdoch said quietly.
Big, strong, shy, and orange. There's only one engine with those mix of traits, and that's Murdoch. Murdoch is Sodor's heavy freight engine. He was brought in to haul heavy freight trains across the island to the mainland. He was one of several new characters brought in during Thomas & Friends' 7th season, and he did not stick around that long. Nowadays, Murdoch is one of the many glupshidos that people look back on and wonder what could have been. So let's give him some love and talk about him. What is Murdoch all about? Murdoch debuted in the Season 7 episode Peace and Quiet. The Fat Controller brought him on to haul heavy freight trains. At the time, Murdoch was the biggest engine the island had ever seen, and everyone was taken aback by him. Everyone wanted to talk with him, especially Harvey and Salty, who were full of questions.
What's the longest train you've ever pulled?
Have you ever worked Marseille?
Have you ever crashed?
As we quickly find out, Murdoch is not one for chatting. In fact, he hates it. He hates loud noise, crowds, and engines that don't stop yapping. Salty and Harvey pester him so much that he snaps at them.
Please, I want some peace and quiet, and I don't want to share a shed with chatterboxes. No need to be rude.
Quite the short fuse on this guy. Murdoch eventually gets his peace and quiet the next day when hauling a train through the countryside, but it gets rudely interrupted by sheep blocking his line. Unable to move them, poor Murdoch has to wait for help, and is forced to listen to their constant baaing.
Please stop. I'd rather be back with the chatterbox engines.
After enduring what was basically his personal hell, Salty and Harvey's questions don't seem so bad, and Murdoch comes around.
I'm sorry that I was cross, he chuffed. I'm very pleased to share a shed with you. And we're pleased to have your company.
And that's all we got for Murdoch as far as spotlight roles go. He continued to pop up occasionally in Season 7, once taking part in a Best Dressed Engine competition.
Even Murdoch was being decorated, although he was very shy about it.
It seems that he mostly stays at Knapford Sheds with the other newcomers, Emily and Arthur being his shedmates, at least for this season, because we know Emily later moved out. And after not really a whole lot from him in Season 7, Murdoch started petering out. Yeah, this soon. In Season 8, he showed up pulling a goods train and accidentally swiped Percy's magic carpet from him. He was one of several engines that laughed at Emily in Season 11, and he pushed Rocky around in Season 12. His most substantial appearance before disappearing forever was in Season 12's Excellent Emily, a very rare Murdoch speaking role, and he was given a CGI face. He warns Emily about flooded tracks on her route, but Emily, of course, ignores him. Gee, I wonder what'll happen. Emily sticks in a flood, and who should come to her rescue but Murdoch? Good old Murdoch pulls Emily to safety. Ain't it kinda neat that they paired Emily and Murdoch for this episode? 2 of the Season 7 characters? Probably not intentional, but neat to see 2 Season 7 props reunited. And while it's not meant to be Murdoch, his chassis appears in the episode Halloween, being used under the Ghost engine here. It's really hard to make out because of the fog, but that's unmistakably a 10-wheel chassis, and you can just make out some orange if you squint hard enough. And that's it. A grand total of 7 appearances, and only 3 of those he has dialogue in. What a nothing character, right? Yet for a character with so few appearances, Murdoch actually has quite a fan following. A lot of fans really like him. I like him. So what is it exactly? What is it about Murdoch that fans flock to? Well, I can't speak for everyone, but I can speculate. I think just the fact that he's a big, normal British tender engine is part of it. Everyone likes those. And they're surprisingly rare in the series, so that makes him stand out quite a bit. Here's why I like Murdoch. Murdoch is great representation of a true introvert in this series. At the time of his introduction, we never really saw a character like this. Someone who is quite shy and standoffish. Someone who likes being left alone in peace and values their alone time. People who are introverted are sometimes viewed as weird or antisocial, but that's not the case with Murdoch. He's not weird. He just knows what he likes. He values his alone time. That's where he thrives. You could also make the case that Murdoch shows some signs of autism. You know, doesn't deal with loud noise in crowds very well, does not enjoy being forced to be social, snapping when feeling overstimulated. The signs are all there for interpretation. This was probably unintentional in 2003, but I can totally see why someone on the spectrum now may find comfort in a character like Murdoch. Making their biggest, strongest character at the time a major introvert like this was a pretty inspired idea. He's the exact opposite of what you'd expect when told he's a strongman type. When you hear a name like Murdoch and see he's a huge tender engine, you probably expect him to be some sort of big, brawny, confident jock type. But nope, not the case with Murdoch. He is the definition of a gentle giant. I think the biggest flaw with Murdoch is not with the character himself, but with how the show used him. Or should I say, their lack of using him. After his debut season, the show barely remembered that this guy existed. He barely ever talked again. There's so much story potential with a character like this, and goodness knows fans have created some really great stories with Murdoch. Thank goodness for fan content. So, why did this happen? Why was Murdoch sidetracked? To be honest, I think I mostly blame Hit Entertainment for this one. Their changes to the show involved shifting a major focus on the main cast in Season 8, pushing everyone else to the side. And while a couple of the Season 7 newbies like Emily and Spencer managed to break through and stay relevant, Murdoch was unfortunately one of the many casualties of this shift in focus. A lot of those forgotten characters eventually returned later down the line, but Murdoch never did. And I mostly think the reason for that is because so many other characters had come along and fulfilled his quirks. We've had bigger, strong engines since him, and we've had other introvert characters. I also think the shift in Henry's character in the CGI series is also worth mentioning. Since CGI, they really pushed Henry being the heavy freight engine character, and they also really started playing up his more timid character traits. The novelty of a timid, shy, big engine wasn't really that novel anymore. So really, what would Murdoch have brought to the table that other characters weren't already? With that sort of perspective in mind, I can see why the show team at the time saw him as a low priority. But all the same, it's still a shame that he was forgotten about. So let's get into the meat of this. Murdoch's design. Murdoch is based on a pretty recognizable engine, the British Railway Standard Class 9F. The 9Fs were the ultimate be-all end-all of British steam, the very last standard gauge steam engine design in British railway history, and so it embodied all the perfected design traits of previous standard classes. Because of their great size and bulky shape, they were given the nickname spaceships. The 9Fs were first proposed in 1953. They were designed to perform long-distance heavy freight work, and so had a 210 wheel arrangement, a mighty 10 drive wheels, which gave them great traction to haul their heavy loads. They were some of the strongest steam engines in Britain, so it should be no surprise that they performed their heavy freight work with ease. They were even trialed on passenger trains early on, and managed those well too, proving their versatility. 251 9Fs were built from 1954 to 1960, and most agree that they were the most successful British steam engine design. Dieselization was quickly on the way, however, and it became clear that the 9Fs would be British Railway's final undertaking in steam traction. The last ever 9F was built in Swindon in 1960, number 92220. Knowing full well that it'd be the last ever built for the foreseeable future, it was commemorated with a name, Evening Star, a fitting name for what it represented. It was commemorated with a copper-capped chimney, a staple of Swindon-built locos, and a BR-lined green livery. A livery usually resided for passenger locos, the only 9F to be given a color other than black in service. Evening Star was built with the intention of it being preserved forever, and indeed she is. She lives on today at the National Railway Museum in York. Despite their success, the 9F's lives were tragically short. They were withdrawn unexpectedly early when British Railways started pulling steam off the main line in the mid-60s. By the time of the final withdrawals in 1968, many 9Fs were only around 10 years old. Extremely short working lives for these beasts. We're very lucky that several 9Fs survive today in preservation, many of them in working condition, but more on them later. It should be no shock that when they proposed a new heavy freight engine character in Season 7, the engine they chose for it was a 9F. It was visually quite different than anything in Thomas at the time, the only engine with 10 drive wheels, and bearing distinct smoke deflectors on each side of the face. And it was appropriate for the time period that the show takes place in. The show's concept artist, Robert Galgaliers, drew up concept art for Murdoch, in which he was depicted in a maroon livery with gold lining. Ho ho ho! He also had a double chimney here, likely because this art was based on this exact photo of Evening Star from the 60s. We have no confirmed reason why they ditched the maroon livery. I think most people agree it's because Arthur was also maroon, and it just would have been confusing to introduce two new characters in the same color. So they went with a color that no standard gauge engine had worn before in the show. A sort of goldeny orange with green lining. You know, as garish as it is, I think I prefer the orange. Murdoch's prop was built during production of Season 7 in 2002. He was made entirely out of brass. Can you imagine how much this thing weighs? Murdoch's prop still exists today and is currently in storage with Mattel. It was recently on display at the World of Thomas exhibition in Japan for the series' 80th anniversary, alongside all of his faces. Considering that Mattel seemed to have no issue with auctioning the character props that aren't Audrey originals, or characters that appeared in CGI, it's curious to me that they opted to keep Murdoch. Maybe they just really like his design, but who really knows? Now that we know everything there is to know about Murdoch, how can we work him into the Railway Series universe? What could a potential backstory for this guy look like? Admittedly, Murdoch is a fairly easy character to work into the Railway Series. The 9Fs were common enough and around during the time period the biggest chunk of the books takes place in. As usual, I did a little research on the class to craft an interesting backstory for him. This is what I came up with. Of the 251 9Fs built, 8 of them went to Woodham Brothers, or more commonly known as Berry Island Scrapyard, a well-known scrapyard that fortunately chose to scrap its rolling stock first, leaving its engines till later. As a result of putting the engines off, it gave them ample time to be rescued by preservation groups. A whopping 213 engines in preservation today came from Berry Island. 8 confirmed 9Fs went to Berry, and 6 of those 9Fs are still around today. 2 did not make it. 92232 and 92085. 92232 I couldn't find much info on, or even a photo of it at Berry, so we'll look to 92085. 92085 was the 9F that got away. Built in 1956, it was only a mere 10 years old when it was withdrawn from service in 1966. It was sent to Berry, and there it sat rotting away for about 15 years, before finally being broken apart in 1980. Despite it surviving there for so long, it was unfortunately and reluctantly scrapped to keep the Berry workers employed due to a lack of other available rolling stock to break apart at the time. A grim reminder that even though Berry saved several engines, they were still a scrapyard with a business to run. The poor engine. But in our alternate universe, let's say it survived, and this is how. 92085, or Murdoch as his crew named him, ran long-distance goods trains across Britain, often running trains from Wales and up towards Carlisle. As a long-distance freight engine, Murdoch would often go long periods of time traveling through the peaceful countryside, and enjoyed his time alone in the quiet. He never much cared for the big crowded areas where he'd bring his trains to be loaded and unloaded. He always dreaded when a home signal appeared ahead, and he knew he was nearing the end of his piece. With Sodor in its proximity, Murdoch would sometimes find his way there, bringing goods trains to the big harbor at Tidmouth. He would sometimes stay the night at the engine sheds and leave next day. He was a semi-regular visitor in those days, and on his first visit was rather put off by how much the other engines wanted to talk to him. They'd never seen an engine of his size before. "You're a chatty lot," he muttered to himself quietly. On his journey back next day, he was stopped in his tracks by a flock of sheep that found their way onto the main line, and he had to wait for a Sodor engine to bring along a farmer to clear them. As time went on, and Murdoch visited more often, he eventually got on well with the other big engines. As quite a young engine, he enjoyed hearing stories of the others' adventures, but would still sometimes get annoyed when they'd start arguing or keep on yapping when he was ready to go to sleep. Murdoch never really talked much, and often kept to himself, so the engines on Sodor were really the only ones in his life that he could call his friends. Murdoch's working life with British Railways was cut short. With rapid modernization occurring, he, alongside many of his classmates, were withdrawn from service. Murdoch found himself brought to Berry Island, and there he languished, waiting to be scrapped. He was surrounded by several engines, but none of them were really in the spirit to talk much. For the first time in his life, Murdoch actually dreaded the quiet. It was seemingly never ending. Come the 1970s, and with the rise of container traffic, freight out of Tidmouth began to rise. The Fat Controller had acquired rights to run long-distance freight trains to the Midlands. Henry and Bear could only manage so much of this long-distance work while also juggling their other jobs. The Fat Controller saw the need for another engine to assist, and decided to take action before one of the two was due to go to the works. He looked over his options. He was well aware of Berry Island, as by this point, the movement of saving engines from there was well in motion. So he made a journey there himself one day, and came across 92085. He recognized the number, and indeed the engine recognized him. "You're the Sir Charles Hatt," he said. "I've been to your railway. I've met many of your engines." "Indeed, and I need another engine on my railway. If I save you, will you work hard?" And the rest is history. As Murdoch was familiar with the Sodor engines, the Fat Controller was happy to save him. He also found him a new tender, and Murdoch was towed to Crovan's Gate to be restored. And when it came time for paints, Murdoch made a request. "I've been painted black my whole life, sir. Could I be painted something else?" What colors did you have in mind?" "Well, I've never seen any orange engines on your railway." The Fat Controller chuckled at first. It was such an odd request that he couldn't deny it. And so, Murdoch was given his special orange livery, and his new bright look marked a change in him. Now he runs the long-distance freight traffic from Tidmouth to the Midlands, sometimes working alongside Henry and Bear. He stays at Tidmouth with the others, and is sometimes referred to as the railway's fourth big engine. Murdoch has really come out of his shell since his new life began, and is a lot more talkative and social than he used to be. He still values his alone time though, and feels most at peace when traveling through the serene Sodor countryside. I wouldn't say that my take on Murdoch is all that unique. Wow, an engine saved from Berry. How original of you, Tug. You know we already have an engine with that story, right? Well, since Berry the engine was never canon, I figured it was fine to give that story to another character. And this is a bit of a twist on the Save from Scrap arc. Murdoch's not an engine that evaded scrap to escape to Sodor. He's an engine that was saved from scrap because he had ties to Sodor. Murdoch already knew everyone, and was grateful to become one of their family. As likable as Murdoch is, I think his time is done. It's been done. I really don't think that we'll ever see this character in any form of the show again. But anything's possible with this new reboot, of course. Who knows what faces will pop up in it. I'd love to see Murdoch again, but for now, he will live on through the great fan content featuring him. If anyone knows how to make use of a character in this series, it's the fans. This pick of the week has nothing to do with Murdoch, but with his Season 7 peer, Emily. This is Emily and the Express, a Wonders of Sodor adaptation by Train Adventure. The story scenario, Emily and the Express, featured in Wonders of Sodor, apparently had a lot cut from it, including an entire opening scene where Emily talks about her past and how her sisters on the Great Northern Railway could reach speeds over 80 miles an hour. It's like everything that I've ever wanted to see the show do with Emily. It's actually crazy this exists. But for some reason, major chunks of this story were cut from the final game. But people managed to find Mark Morahan's full narration for it in the game files. And Train Adventure here has faithfully recreated it as a full episode. It's a really nice Emily story, and this adaptation is filmed really well. Check it out, give it some love. So how do you all like the new end card design here, huh? I did a little overhaul of it so I could show more of my patrons' names at once. Now you can see double the amount. I like it a lot more. Much better use of real estate, I think. So, that special reboot YouTube content, huh? Yeah, that turned out to just be more of that watch out Thomas toy slop, just with the new toys. Not actually anything for the new show itself. Well, that's a bummer. Guess we'll just have to wait till September to get a better idea of what this reboot has in store for us. It's alright with me. I don't mind waiting. Apparently the new toys are starting to pop up in stores now. That's pretty exciting. So keep an eye out for them if you're interested. That's all from me, everyone. Have a great day, all, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.